tale begins in a city left in ruins, its destruction caused by a secretive dig that accidentally shattered an age-old seal. Because of this, an unusual crimson fog began to drift through the air, causing anyone who breathed it in to lose their sanity before meeting their demise. For the majority of living beings, the transformation took a darker turn, as they became fearsome monsters with strange powers, later called. In the middle of all the turmoil, a young man stood with one arm changed into something unnatural, his gaze fixed on the devastation surrounding him. No matter where these creatures traveled, devastation followed in their wake, reducing once thriving cities to nothing but shattered remnants. The creature lunged at the crowd, causing terror to sweep through everyone and triggering a wave of panic that quickly overwhelmed the streets. The military was summoned to address the danger, and soon a warplane launched a missile in response. The missile strikes its target, triggering a huge blast that rips through the heart of the city, which was already in ruins. A powerful explosion erupts, sending a thick cloud of smoke rolling over the entire area until nothing nearby remains visible. As the dust finally cleared, the main character found himself encircled by terrifying wolf-like beasts, and in his panic he shouted the name. The creatures inched closer to him, their teeth exposed in a menacing display as they prepared to leap. Upon grasping what was happening, the main character's eyes began to shine with a fiery red light as he cried out the girl's name again, his voice echoing with urgency. He rushed toward the monsters, unleashing a relentless assault on them with his mutated arm. Following the attack, the main character noticed a sudden, stabbing ache in his arm, which had begun to shine with a vivid red light. Despite his altered form, he stands firm amidst the debris, prepared to face whatever challenges lie ahead. With unwavering determination in his gaze and eyes shining brightly, he softly murmured Sue's name again. He forced his way through the rubble-strewn streets, his voice echoing as he desperately searched for the girl. While making his way forward, he accidentally trod on a rag doll that had been left in the center of the path. Upon spotting the toy, the young man dropped to his knees and repeatedly called out Sue's name. The creature's enormous hand extended toward the floor, its fingers curling carefully around the discarded doll as it lifted the toy from where it had fallen. Before he has a chance to reach it, his arm shifts back into its normal human shape. At that instant, a streak of blood trickled down his face while he gazed sadly at the doll. In the heart of the ruined city, he stood by himself, his voice rising in a desperate shout as he searched frantically for any sign of her. 3 days before, the scene shifts to a news broadcast discussing an unexplained red mist. Within the confines of a car, the protagonist found themselves trapped amid an endless sea of traffic. A soldier suddenly slammed his fist against the window, urgently ordering the group to move their car without delay. Soldiers filled the streets, and the protagonist's father grumbled about how politicians were never to be trusted. Sue admitted her fear, but the main character's father comforted her, promising that everything would turn out fine. The protagonist observes the entire chaotic scene as it plays out, their mind absorbed in contemplation about everything happening. At the same time, the soldiers gazed upward, curiosity filling their minds as they tried to figure out the mysterious red haze drifting across the sky. Without warning, the helicopter overhead burst into flames, plummeting from the sky and smashing directly onto the vehicles below. All the passengers in the car are left speechless by the sight before them, while the main character's father reacts with shock and terror at the unfolding events. Recognizing the threat, the young man quickly moves to protect his sister, positioning himself between her and the danger while urgently instructing her to duck for cover. At that moment, another car crashed into theirs, sending their vehicle rolling over from the force of the collision. The young man struggled free from the twisted remains of the crash, his voice trembling with concern as he called out to check on the safety of his parents. His father explains that his leg is trapped, as his mother lets out a cough, clearly bewildered by everything happening around them. The protagonist's parents lay wounded, leaving Sue overwhelmed with fear as chaos unfolded around him. Without warning, the protagonist's gaze shifts to the side, fear evident in their voice as they wonder aloud about the strange object before them. A massive beast resembling a dragon suddenly materializes, causing the crowd to scatter in a frantic attempt to escape. Trapped under the twisted metal, the main character's father shouted desperately, urging them to escape the car and flee to safety. The young man freed himself from the wreckage and hurriedly helped his sister escape the ruined car. He gently grasps her hand, and together they step out of the car. His parents pleaded with him to take his sister and escape, but the main character could not bring himself to abandon them. As witnessed a monster assaulting a person just steps away from her, she cried out desperately for assistance. Upon witnessing the unfolding danger, his mother seized his arm and her voice filled with panic, urgently urged him to escape immediately. His mother, wearing a sorrowful smile, gently reminded him that he was now the older brother and entrusted him with the responsibility of looking after Sue. Without warning, a surge of crimson energy swept through the area and hurled the two siblings onto the ground. Suddenly, a massive, terrifying wolf emerged before the group, its posture tense and aggressive as it prepared to strike. Feeling a surge of panic, the siblings glanced over their shoulders and cried out for help, their voices reaching their parents who remained stuck inside the vehicle. The beast fixed its fiery red gaze on the siblings and revealed its sharp teeth in a menacing display. The main character instinctively moves to assist, but his sister grabs his arm, preventing him from intervening, while the wolf steadily approaches the vehicle. High above the city, an enormous airborne beast unleashed further havoc and turmoil upon the streets below. Not only the animals, but everyone exposed to the mist began transforming into terrifying creatures. On the streets, crowds descended into chaos as individuals lost their sanity and began violently lashing out at one another. Fleeing alongside his sister, the boy desperately tried to make sense of the chaos that had overtaken the world. All around, additional creatures emerged, scaling the sides of buildings and darting through the shattered streets. They ducked into a nearby store to conceal themselves, and the main character gently pressed a hand over his sister's mouth as a terrifying creature drew nearer. His pulse raced as he kept his eyes fixed on the creature, silently praying it would overlook their hiding spot. Fortune favored them as the monster passed close, oblivious to their presence, and moved along its path without ever realizing they were there. Feeling a brief sense of relief, he wrapped his arms around his sister in a comforting embrace and reassured her that they were safe, at least for the time being. Without warning, Sue cried out in agony, her face quickly becoming marked with bright red veins. Concerned, he gently embraced her, noticing her discomfort as she explained that she was feeling unwell. At that moment, he catches a glimpse of himself and notices that red veins have started to spread across his own face as well. He questions whether the events unfolding could be a result of inhaling an excessive amount of the red mist. He rushed to assist by snatching a water bottle and drenching a scrap of cloth with it. He gently sets the cloth over her face, signaling for her to shield her mouth, fully aware that she needs to safeguard herself. Without warning, a sharp agony surged through the protagonist, causing his eyes to emit an eerie red light. He slumps to the ground, his body consumed by a fiery sensation, certain that something within him is desperately struggling to break free. Noticed something was off and questioned him about it. Although he attempted to reassure that everything was okay, his hands suddenly started to change shape. Just then, the terrifying wolf that had appeared earlier showed up again within the store's walls. His sister's fear grew as the monster drew nearer, and she pleaded with him to put an end to what he was doing. The creature eventually tracks down the siblings, baring its sharp fangs as it gets ready to launch an attack on them. Realizing the imminent threat, the main character quickly pushes his sister out of harm's way and urges her to escape while the creature leaps toward them. The pair successfully slipped out of the store and raced frantically along the street, their hearts pounding with fear. By a stroke of misfortune, a massive winged beast descended from above, making a direct path toward them. Gripped by fear as another creature closed in, looked around desperately, searching for any sign of what they should do next. The main character wrapped his arms around her in a comforting embrace, assuring her with gentle words that she didn't need to be scared because he would keep her safe. Without warning, an enormous creature resembling a dragon hurtled down from the sky, heading straight for the group. The beast crashed down onto the earth, unleashing a powerful shockwave that tore through everything nearby. Realizing there is no escape, the young man questions whether this truly marks the end for them. RMC quickly grabs his sister's arm and guides her away from danger, though she appears unsure and reluctant to move with him. Once inside, he picks up a pipe, convinced that the outside world is far too perilous, and believes this is their sole opportunity to succeed. The boy's face twisted with anger as he prepared himself to confront the creature trapping them with no escape. Summoning all his strength, he rushed toward the monstrous creature and struck it forcefully. However, the pipe in his hands broke apart upon impact. The creature hardly reacts, its expression shifting to one of intense fury as it fixes its blazing gaze on the main character. Noticing a brief chance, The creature lunges toward the main character, who quickly raises his arms in an attempt to shield himself from the assault. With swift reflexes, the young man thrust a pointed object into the creature's eye, using the moment of pain to escape its grasp. In the background, wonders aloud about her brother's well-being and assures herself that she will find a way to assist him. The creature, now enraged by its wound, lunges forward with renewed ferocity while he desperately yells for her to escape. The girl dashed away in a desperate attempt to save herself, all the while hearing his pleas for her to keep her eyes fixed forward and not glance behind. Severely wounded from the battle, the protagonist began to cough harshly, blood splattering onto the earth beneath them. Just then, a sharp pain surges through his entire body, leaving him questioning why such agony would strike at this particular moment. At that moment, the wolf closed in on Sue, who stumbled and collapsed onto the ground, letting out a terrified scream. Moments before the decisive strike lands, a strange change overtakes the protagonist's arm, causing it to morph before everyone's eyes. The protagonist moved quickly, arriving just in time to stop the beast before it could sink its teeth into. His eyes shone with a fierce red light as he loomed above the wolf, gripping his weapon tightly. Overcome with fury, he unleashed a relentless assault on the beast, his voice echoing with desperate demands for it to disappear. Stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror as she witnessed the violent events playing out in front of her. She darts forward and wraps her arms around her brother from behind, desperately pleading with him to put an end to his reckless actions. She continues to beg, and gradually he begins to relax, his composure returning to what it once was. At that moment, he recalled how his mother had pleaded with him to escape from that place. Despite their injuries, his parents managed to smile and gently reminded him that he needed to look after his sister now, since he was her older brother. A fond recollection of his parents emerged, as they urged him and Sue to do whatever it took to stay alive. Returning to the present as his older self, he gazed at his sister and softly spoke her name. Gazes at him, her eyes brimming with tears, her heart heavy with concern for her brother's well-being. He offered a reassuring smile as he expressed regret for causing her concern, while she inquired if he was feeling better now. Right as he prepares to respond, the reflection in the window reveals yet another massive monster looming behind them. The monster burst through the wall, prompting him to swiftly pull his sister close in order to protect her from harm. The enormous, bird-like beast unleashed a fearsome roar aimed directly at the two siblings. C prepared to defend themselves, mentally labeling the creature as an unattractive bird. He shouted at the creature to leave his sister alone and rushed toward it, gripping his staff tightly. With a surge of strength, the protagonist delivers a forceful blow that sends the monstrous creature hurtling backward. Following the collision, he instructed to find a safe place to hide, determined to confront the monsters alone. The young man goes on to clarify that the larger creature is targeting them, so he must distract it and draw it away from the group. Sue, trembling with fear, clung tightly to him, pleading desperately for him to stay because she worried he might lose control once more. The young man gently reassured the girl by patting her head, vowing that he would keep his composure this time. He cradles her with care, reassuring her to stay put as he assures her of his quick return. Her eyes filled with concern, as she urged him to assure her that he would return unharmed. Wearing a look of assurance, the protagonist promises that he will certainly return for her. Having made up his mind, the boy dashes forward, hoping to lure the monstrous creatures away from his sister. He considered the possibility that defeating monsters and absorbing their energy could increase his strength. Believing that conquering the new monster would grant him the strength he sought, he confronted the creature head-on. The main character fixed his determined gaze on the creature and shouted at it, commanding it to get down. Despite his presence, the massive monster pays him no attention, leaving him to face a pack of encircling wolves. He feels a sting of indignation, wondering if he isn't even worth the monster's effort. Anger burned in his eyes as he prepared for battle, realizing that reaching the boss would require him to forcefully make his own way forward. He launched himself at the wolves, swinging his staff and striking one of them firmly. At that moment, a creature sank its teeth into his arm, but he seized it with fury. At that moment, his arms changed shape, allowing him to take down two wolves instantly while he shouted for the end of them all. A sly grin spread across his face as he questioned internally whether this sensation was what true power felt like, marveling at how amazing it was. Above, an aging aircraft emerged unexpectedly, soaring directly at the monstrous creature. The flying creature noticed the airplane overhead, while the protagonist remained bewildered by everything happening around him. He gazes down at his altered arm, confusion swirling in his mind as he tries to make sense of the bizarre changes overtaking his body. At that moment, the aircraft launched a missile, sending it speeding directly toward him. Concerned for his safety, steps out from her place of concealment, yet he urgently begs her not to move from where she is. The missile struck the earth, unleashing a massive blast that obliterated everything nearby. The aircraft soared above the blast area, as a passenger pointed out that some people below were still alive. The soldiers showed up and, realizing the protagonist was infected, chose to abandon them. Instead, they took with them and left the protagonist behind. At that moment, a soldier lifts her into his arms and swiftly rushes her away from the scene. As he lay on the ground, he stretched out his hand, desperately calling for Sue while being abandoned.